A fair chunk of my work is looking at alternative fuels and future technologies and where markets are going in general within the UK automotive area. So what I'd just like to pose today is the question whether alternative fuels can work for commercial vehicles in the UK. So I want to start off with a slightly different approach because I want to actually talk about cars for a minute. Because what we see happening in the car market often filters through, especially from a technology perspective, into commercial vehicles. Also, some of the emission and legislative stuff moves over as well. So if we look at, for a moment, the UK car market, we've had a couple of big drivers moving our industry over to alternative fuels, or at least a significant interest in them. Some of it's been legislation, some of it's been taxation. And with legislation, we've got the EU CO2 emission legislation. That means any manufacturer of, in this case, new cars, selling them within the European Union, their weighted sales average for their vehicles at the moment, because the last threshold was 2015, have to be 130 gram per kilometre or less as an average. Every vehicle sold over that and every gram per kilometre over that, and the manufacturer gets fined. And it's not small fines, it's not small beer, it's a lot of money. And that's why manufacturers have been working very hard in the car market to reduce emissions and even going to the extent of buying other companies that have smaller vehicles or lower emitting vehicles to try and offset some of their higher emitting vehicles at the other end. So we've had a lot of change in the market there. And the key thing for us at the moment is in 2020, the emission level falls to a weighted average of 95 grams per kilometre. On the other side of the fence, we've got taxes and incentives for adopting low emission vehicles. The government's got a number of reasons for wanting to promote this. We have urban air quality issues, we have global warming, and we have the EU also pushing a European agenda down the line. And we've got lots of CO2-based taxation and incentives in our market. We've got company car taxes based on CO2, we've got vehicle excise duty, employer NI, writing down allowances, lease rental restrictions, and we have the plug-in vehicle grants that OLEV provide. And this all has an impact, and we can demonstrate that has an impact. 2002, the CO2-based company car tax came in. So bear in mind it's going to take a little while to sort of bed in. If you look at emissions from 2004 to 2014, so a 10-year chunk, we went from an average new vehicle CO2 emission level of 171 gram per kilometre, and that fell to 124 gram per kilometre. Last year at Lex Autolease, our average customer CO2 for cars was 115 gram per kilometre. So we're making our way down to that 95 grams, but most manufacturers believe that to be able to get that average at 95 grams, they're going to have to introduce plug-in technology. They're going to have to bring in a low carbon fuel onto that vehicle, such as electricity, to get all their vehicles under it. They'll get some cars under it, but not all. So what we've seen recently is a lot of our customers now are opting, or at least looking into, plug-in vehicles. We've got about 4,500 plug-in cars now on our fleet at Lex Autolease. Our first plug-in came in 2011. The majority of that has happened in the last 24 months. That's how quickly the market can start changing when this technology comes in. We also have a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle on our fleet as well. That came on last month. And to demonstrate how some customers are really focusing on reducing the emissions, we've got some customers who are now running fleets with an average under 100 gram per kilometre. We've got one customer where over 10% of their fleet is now electric. So really now, obviously we're residing in the commercial vehicle market here. And my suggestion to you will be that there's now focus on commercial vehicles. The cars are progressing. The government is now putting a bigger microscope onto commercial vehicles. At the moment, the comment you hear around the industry is diesel's king. You know, that's the fuel of choice. It gives the cost, the right cost point. It gives the reliability, ease of maintenance, all those sorts of things. And we've got 99% of our commercial vehicle fleet over is diesel. But interestingly, we now have 132 pure electric vehicles on our fleet. Not many when you consider we've got 83,000 commercial vehicles on our fleet, but I suggest it's a very good start. And when you look at how many petrol vans we've got on our fleet, 56, we've actually now got more pure electric vehicles on our commercial fleet than petrol. So we are at a point where people are now evaluating this technology and adopting it. We understand there are challenges. There are limited alternatives when you come to commercial vehicles. At the moment, there's only a handful of vehicles available in the 3.5 tonne and up segment, for instance, for electric. We have a limited number of electric commercial vehicles and alternatively fueled commercial vehicles, and they're typically 2.5 tonne and below. So we know there are challenges there. But what we're trying to do is get people to really focus on having a 5-year plan to consider what type of technologies you should be using going forwards and what your strategy should be about consideration of these fuels. Because there's a lot of legislation and there's a lot of focus coming in to this area. So I mentioned one of the big legislative pulls to cars was the European average emissions for manufacturers. We've got it for commercial vehicles. 2017, not far away now. It's scary. I still remember, I had a hard paper round. I still remember 2000 and all the computers were going to stop. So I can't believe that 2017 is just around the corner. 175 gram per kilometre, all your commercial vehicles. If you're a manufacturer that you're selling in Europe, your average weighted CO2, 175 next year. In 2020, 147 gram per kilometre. So that is really going to start pushing manufacturers to look at how they can get the emissions down. We've got Euro 6 coming in September, or finalising in September. That's not interested in fuel economy or CO2. That's purely interested in tailpipe emissions, your particulates, your NOx, and the like. But here's a big thing, and this, I think, is a bit of a game changer for where we are at the moment. And there was a piece on the BBC News this morning. If you haven't seen it, watch it tonight on TV. It was about urban air quality. Diesel a major concern. The new vehicles are certainly a lot better than older vehicles. So there is an argument that try and get the older vehicles off the road first. But there is a lot more focus on managing air quality and significant reductions. So the legislators are looking at not just charging people to go into cities, but potentially even stopping certain vehicles, the really high polluters, from going into cities. And that was being discussed this morning, the clear air zones. We've had the London low emission zone for a while. We've got an ultra low emission zone coming into London in 2020. But probably more importantly for me, because a lot of political talk is about London, we're now seeing that branch out. So Birmingham, Leeds, Nottingham, Derby and Southampton are all going to be clear zones in 2020. Now, that will probably mean, it hasn't been decided yet, but if you're not Euro 5 or Euro 6, at best you'll have to pay to get into those cities. That's the thought process. They might go to blocking vehicles going in, but that is politically very, very difficult. If you want to look at ensuring you maintain free access or cheaper access into cities, if you want to be ahead of the game, I'd be thinking about that now rather than waiting to see what comes. the final piece, it's great talking about what's happening in the future, but what as commercial vehicle operators and fleet operators can you do now? My view is a lot of the time we don't go back to a clean sheet of paper, we don't go back to basics. What do we need the vehicles for? And I'm talking about individual vehicles. Many fleet operators will get a vehicle that will do multiple operations, buy that number in bulk and have a lot of the same vehicles because that does everything. I think now we have to start thinking about, well, what does that vehicle need to do? What does that group of vehicle need to do? Split it down a bit more. And for me, find the actual requirements and then look for the sweet spots where you could potentially put zero emission vehicles in. So low daily mileage, say 50 to 70 miles per day as a guide. Return to base drive cycles. So there's downtime at a place where you could actually put a charger in there. Urban drive cycles, because it's that urban driving that pure electrics are better at. And it's also that urban driving where there's the air quality issue in place. There are local financial benefits, ultra low emission zones, congestion charging, clean air zones. If you're zero emission, the majority of those are or will be free. But there are also benefits for the business, demonstrating green credentials. If you've got a van speeding down the road or driving erratically with your name on the side of that vehicle, that's not a very good advertisement for your business. Equally, we've got customers who are livering up their vehicles with how clean their business is. We know businesses where their whole raison d'etre is clean, and it can be a powerful message to show that you're living up to your marketing spiel, you're actually doing it. And be prepared for more legislation, because you'll be aware that in the press there's a lot of talk about NOx emissions and the harm that that causes to health. And I think the good thing at the moment for me and our business is we're providing these vehicles and our customers are turning around and saying, you know what, that's actually worked better than we thought, we'll have a few more. So we've got customers like Birmingham University where over 10% of their fleet is pure electric and they are commercial vehicles. Yes, they operate in a tight geographic location, but the vehicles are right for them. If you're sending 3.5-ton vans down the motorways between major cities, you're going to struggle at the moment. But it's looking for those sweet spots when you can apply this technology, and we can help and we can provide these vehicles at the moment. So I think the key thing for me is ensure your vehicles are fit for purpose, review from base principles, and consider over the next 5 years how those legislative changes and the increased perception about urban air quality could actually affect your fleet operation. Thank you.